guys, my name is Ritu. This is my first YouTube video, and for this I wanted to do the eyeshadow palette tag made by Samantha March and Ali Clients. So I seriously started collecting eyeshadow palettes in 2020, and from then till now I have it has become a substantial collection. So I thought I'd take a look at my collection and do this eyeshadow palette tag. So the first question was which is your all-time favorite palette? So for my all-time favorite palette, I chose my Mcgrath Labs Bronze Seduction palette. I chose this to be my all-time favorite palette based on its color story and the variety of formulas that it has. Firstly, it is a neutral palette, mostly a neutral palette. It has light browns and deep browns, a pop of red, and really amazing glitter formula. So I chose this to be my all-time favorite palette because it is a neutral palette which can be an everyday palette. It is not too warm, not too cool. It has a really great selection of glitters which can be toned down or built up for a really glittery, shiny effect on the lid. I personally feel that it is a complete palette. It can go from day to night, and the formula is also really amazing. So for that, it gets to be my all-time favorite eyeshadow palette. So the next question was, which is my new favorite eyeshadow palette? My new favorite eyeshadow palette will have to be this Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette. This palette was when it launched, it was really hyped. I kept seeing pictures of it on Instagram and it looked so beautiful in those pictures. It still does, looks a bit lighter now, but in real life it is not as light. It is a cool tone palette, so you should be aware of that. Is my new favorite palette because the matte formula, number one, is amazing. It literally blends like butter. There is no skipping, there is no patchiness in this matte formula, and the shimmers are also really foiled and sparkly. It gives that glittery lid effect. Although it is a majorly pink palette, it has some pops of brown. Can go super glam or super subtle with this palette. Like this palette has really great matte to shimmer ratio, although the looks that you will get with this palette will lean a bit pink or purple. But so the next question is the palette which you keep for memories. The palette that I keep for memories is the Jaclyn Hill X Morphe Volume I. This is the palette, so colorful. So the memory attached to this palette is that I begged my sister to get this palette for me for my wedding. I used it a ton for my wedding, and also this was my first proper eyeshadow palette. I never had a eyeshadow palette before this. So this is the palette which I used to learn how to apply eyeshadow basically. So which is why this palette holds a special value for me. I think this is a great palette for travel because I prefer it for the neutral tones. This is my palette which I keep for memories, and I also use it a lot. The next question is, which palette do you think is underrated? So the palette that I think is underrated is Colourpop and the Child palette. It's not underrated technically, it is a very popular palette, but it is more known for its packaging, its cute packaging. But I really think that this color story as a whole is very underrated. I personally feel that this is, like, again, for 9 shades it is a complete palette. A good crease shade, a good deepening shade, a pops of color, a chunky glitter formula, chunky glitter finish formula for all over the lid. It also has a transparent topper shade, and it has the most beautiful olive shades. And I think this palette is great for doing Indian makeup looks with. So I think this palette is underrated. Not that it's not popular, but people don't focus on its color story as much. The next question is the palette which is not your favorite but you can't get rid of it. That palette for me, how did I get this? That palette for me has to be Huda Beauty Medium Nude Obsessions palette. This is there are 3 in this line and this is the medium one. First of all, this palette is so beautiful. Like, that is one of the major reasons that I can't get rid of this palette, is because it's so beautiful to look at. It's such a cohesive color story, but I still don't like to use it much, is because first of all, the mattes are a bit too pink leaning for my taste. I basically, this is my companion palette again. If I am traveling, I will take this for the mattes. Even though they are a bit pink leaning, I can make them work. And there is this gold shade which is also lovely, and the glitters are very foiled, very shiny glitters, so I don't like this palette a lot, but I still can't get rid of it because it is very useful for me. Next question is, which is your favorite collab palette? My favorite collab palette will have to be the Judy x Oden's Red Dragon palette. This is from the legendary Diversa collection. I picked this up because I first of all really wanted to see what the hype was about for Oden's Eye, and I also wanted to support Judy. I like this palette mostly again for the color story. It is mostly neutral color story. You can say a neutral color story with pops of greens, pops of red, and a duochrome, and the glitters, the shimmers are also glittery and very high shine. So I only used this palette once, but I think this is my favorite collab palette. This is the palette that I'm wearing on my eyes today. Next, I'm combining 2 questions. The questions are, which is your favorite palette of 2021, and a palette that sparks joy. So the combined answer for both is Mothership 9, Pat McGrath Labs Mothership 9 Huetopian Rings. This is my favorite palette of 2021 for a lot of reasons. Firstly, the color story. Second, the mattes in here are amazing. They blend so beautifully. I think when compared to the Mothership 5, the mattes here are even better. Also, the astral shades in this palette are so foiled, so shiny. I don't think like they are shinier than Mothership 5. From the astral shades, the normal glitters are, the normal shimmers are also so foiled and reflective. So I think it makes for a very unique color story and a very unique palette, and I think this is a palette which is good for both editorial type looks if you are into that, and it is also a great palette to be worn with, a great palette for Indian wedding type looks. And this sparks joy for me because it's so beautiful. I just love to sit and like look at it, swatch it, take pictures of it. So next question is, a palette which you didn't expect to love. A palette I did not expect to love was this Natasha Denona gold palette. So I did not expect to like this palette because I've been reading a lot of Natasha Denona reviews since the bronze palette launched, and there are a lot of mixed reviews. Some people seem to love it and some people don't think it's worth the price. So for me to get a Natasha Denona palette was a risky thing. First thing to love about this palette is that again it is a neutral, these are neutral leaning browns, which I love. I have never seen a matte eyeshadow blend so beautifully. You need the tiniest amount. It is so pigmented, you need the tiniest amount and it blends like a dream. Anytime I am doing an eyeshadow look, this is the palette that I picked to put in my crease. So I'm combining the questions, which is a palette which you did not expect to like but love, and the first palette I used in 2022. So as I said, the gold palette is the perfect perfect companion palette for me. I use it a lot with my colorful palettes which do not have any neutral shades or crease shades or anything. So I use it as a companion palette for that. Which is the newest palette in your collection. So the newest palette in my collection is Colourpop and the Mandalorian pressed powder palette. So this is a collector's item for me, because I think another reason for buying this palette is that it has a lot of silver. I do not have any silver eyeshadow in my palette, so I thought this would be a perfect palette to fill that gap. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you did, it would be great if you could like and subscribe to my channel. I hope you liked me talking about my eyeshadow palettes, doing nothing with them. Comment down below what you would like to see from my channel, and please follow me on my Instagram. I will link everything down below, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching again. Bye.